It has been more than a year since the graphical updates on the maps have started rolling out, and with only a few maps left to rework, I think now is a good time to look back and see what's changed with the maps and see what still needs improving. For those of you unaware, over the past year, Behaviour has been graphically updating all of the old maps to basically give them a new lick of paint and kind of bring them up into more modern gaming standards, because a lot of the maps are starting to look a bit tired. You know, old Macmillan and old Coldwind did look pretty outdated compared to newer maps like RPD and Midwich. Only 3 realms are left needing to be updated, which is Haddonfield, Red Forest, and the Swamp. And while they're the only ones left, Behaviour have made a lot of mistakes with the previous realms that have been updated, and I want to make this vid here just to discuss some of these issues, since Behaviour still have time to make improvements to the remaining realms to make sure these mistakes aren't repeated. Now, all of you know that maps are where I see DBD's biggest issues. Obviously, the game stability is an issue, you know, optimization, blah, blah, blah. They're obviously bigger issues, but in terms of balance alone, I think most of the game's issues trace back to map problems, whether that be dead zones, killers feeling that the games go too quick, perk balance, because that's heavily map related. A lot of these issues track back to maps, and so maps have to be good, and obviously, you know what I think about maps right now, and I'm going to talk about a lot of what I feel in more detail. For now, I'm going to focus on one issue, because there's so many issues, I just don't see... If I spoke about every map issue, this vid would honestly be an hour long, maybe 2 hours, and while some of you would want that, it's honestly not very watchable, so I kind of just want to focus in on a new issue with maps. I could obviously talk about palette loops, I could talk about safe palettes, and etc. I'm not really going to right in this video. I'm going to focus on the new issue that started propping up since the map reworks have happened, because it feels like we're honestly going backwards with maps with the way they look now. The newer maps honestly play worse than the old maps, and I want to kind of delve into why that is. The new maps look great, they really do. But a lot of the time, it feels like the devs are focusing on the looks of the map over the actual quality, which really hurts to say, but I think it's true. The amount of random extra items that are placed, such as tires or chairs, they look great, but they have some serious impact on gameplay, and to me, the worst offenders of this is RPD and Coldwind. I could pick out, honestly, any of the rework maps and point out hundreds of collision issues, but I'm going to focus on RPD and Coldwind. Now, obviously, RPD isn't reworked, it's brand new, but it follows the same design philosophy as the rework maps, so I'm going to include it in this video and speak heavily about it, since it is the newest map in the game. For example, let's start with a rework map. On Coldwind Farm, there's a rake by the shack window, and it serves no purpose other than looking good, and yet I have honestly been stuck on this as killer while lunging for someone at the window 100 times, easily 100 times. They've added some collision in between the lockers, like a table, I think, which looks great, but it now means you can't hide in between the lockers in Shack, which, again, massively impacts the gameplay. RPD is the absolute worst for this, with so much care being taken that the map is a complete one-for-one copy of what it's like in Resident Evil. It feels like they've been less focusing on how it actually plays in the DBD universe, because at the end of the day, it's a DBD map now, it has to play good. And it doesn't. There's, again, collision issues, there's chairs everywhere, there's a body hanging from the ceiling at the edge of a corridor that I get stuck on all of the time. There's a set of weigh scales upstairs in this random, like, room that I get stuck on all of the time. It's items and objects that are below your camera level. Like, you're looking straight, you're looking at the survivor, and if you're getting stuck on an item that's ankle high, it can get frustrating, because I have to feel like I'm looking around constantly to make sure I'm not getting stuck on items. A big part of me hopes that this is the licensors doing. They're forcing Behaviour's hand in making it a one-for-one copy, but since RPD has an infinite window, which is a shocking window. It's appalling that the devs think this window is okay. And this window isn't there at all in the Resident Evil version of this map. Leads me to believe that it might not be fully the license's problem, and it seems like this is Behavior's doing, because that window is shocking. It's absolutely appalling, but it's not there. It just isn't there in the Resident Evil version. Now, if Behavior really want to go down this route of making maps very, very detailed, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with them being more detailed. I think they look good. It's immersive. But if Behavior go down this road, like they have been for so long, they really, really need to focus more on how the map actually plays. I'm not sure if it's doable, but shrinking the collisions of these items, like the chairs, the rake, the weigh scales, shrinking these collisions down so that you don't get stuck on them could be a good way of fixing this. Or very simply, these items could just not have collision. Like, they have no need to have collision. They're simply there to get stuck on. So these items not having collision and allowing you to just glide past them, again, could be a good way of fixing this issue, because they really need to take care into this, because it just feels like we've gone backwards with maps. Now, I'm not a game designer, so I'm not actually sure if this is doable. It could be quite a lot of work to individually shrink collisions, so I think the devs might be reluctant to do this. Now, if that's the case, and there's nothing that can be done to shrink these collisions or remove these collisions or somehow alter the way that these objects impact the gameplay, then it simply comes down to more care needs to be taken by the devs when maps are being made. It's as simple as that. They need to think about how every single object they're placing has an impact on the gameplay, because it does. If there's a tiny little rock jutting out of a pallet loop, you're gonna get stuck on it. Especially if it's below eye level, survivors are gonna get stuck on it. Killer's gonna get stuck on it. Like, the amount of times I've been chasing people around that giant table in RPD and someone's got stuck on the chair sticking out of the table, it's crazy. So more care needs to be taken about how these actually play in the environment, and more testing needs to be done around these items, around the pallet loops. Like, stick to the pallet loop, run around the pallet loop. Do you get stuck on it? Yes, then change it. It's not right. Like, it sounds like a lot of work, but it honestly needs to be a much higher priority than it is right now. I could go around every single reworked map we've had so far, whether it be Macmillan or Yama or Preschool, and I could pick out a significant number of objects which have a negative impact on the gameplay, getting stuck on these objects, etc., etc. There's a lot of these objects everywhere. Now, if we get to the big problem, is that every single map on top of this still requires a major rework. And I'm like, in this video, I'm only talking about fundamental collision issues, which we have right now. And these aren't even issues that we had 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Like, the maps still have the same problems that they had 2 or 3 years ago. You know, they have the safe versus unsafe pallet issue. We've got breakable walls. We've got pallet count. We've got horrendous tile RNG that can sometimes leave you with massive dead zones or with 50 pallets in a little corner. These issues still exist. Like, this has not gone away. But now we have this extra issue of there's now more collisions that you get stuck on. And it honestly just feels like the graphics update is a huge step backwards in terms of where we've been with maps. I'll be honest, apart from the main building, Preschool felt good for me in terms of a good step forward with maps, because the pallet loops were shorter. You could honestly, apart from the main building, disable Bloodlust on that map, and that map would play perfectly. But as more and more graphic updates have come out, I've realized that the issues are just still there. The maps still have too few pallets. The pallets that they have are all too safe, and they just don't have any flow. And on top of that, we now have these collision issues. And because of that, it's honestly not looking good right now. We've had no word from Behavior whether or not maps are changing, so this is just something that looks like it's going to be there for the long haul. The balance issues are still the same, and it's honestly got worse since Behavior have added these collisions. So these graphical updates that we've been having in the last year are just that. They are graphical updates. The maps look prettier, but they play exactly the same. So as you can see, maps are a rabbit hole. They're a big, big rabbit hole that continue vastly deep down into the game's problems. And Behaviour have got a lot of work. They've got a lot of work to try and fix this. We've got nothing yet of any word that anything's going to happen, so it's looking like we're in this for the long haul, unfortunately. Thank you for watching, everyone. I appreciate it. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Let me know what you think of maps. Also, let me know if you want me to make a video about the rest of the maps issues. I just wanted to cover the absolute fundamental issue with the maps, and then I can expand that into more balancey problems, because this is less of a balance problem and more of just a collision problem. If you want me to delve into the balancey issues with maps, I'm more than happy to do that. You just gotta let me know. But anyway, I'll catch you in the next one, everybody. Later.